Hello everyone, this is Amanda Coulong and welcome to This Week in Cloud Computing. Actually, I am Lauren Bacall today. As you can tell, my voice,
Where's the tooth?
I know, my voice is almost gone.
From
Just
South by
returned
Southwest.
from a wonderful South by Southwest
That's right.
Interactive where Jason did a live This Week in Startup show that went very well with Tony Hsieh from Zappos. But that aside, we have a great cloud computing show today.
Also, we launched the This Weekend website.
We did, thisweekend.com.
That's right. So all the shows are now up at thisweekend.com.
Yeah.
We've fully pulled the whatever the hell off
The
thing.
veil.
The veil has been lifted, so you can see all the shows all at once in one place. So
And
very
I
proud
was,
of the new website. Please
and
tell
I
us what
was
you think.
screaming so loud for the new site that's what happened to my voice. So anyway, we have some sponsors we would like to thank straight away. We have Verticore and Storm On Demand. This show would not be possible without them. Yeah. And also NetDNA.
Yeah, NetDNA, basically all of our streaming, all our shows are streamed now. NetDNA provides all the streaming, so which is fantastic.
Absolutely. So before, without further ado, rather, I would like to introduce our guests. We have Tony Greenberg here in studio. Oh, I'm so awful. Founder of RampRate. How are you,
What's
Tony?
What's up? Good.
Can you understand a word I'm saying?
Yes.
Amanda, you're green. You sound a bit like a frog. You're
No,
either
a
doing
leprechaun.
Kermit. You're either doing Kermit
It's
or a
St.
very
Patty's
wonderful
Day.
St.
I'm a
Patty's Day.
leprechaun.
Be
You're
nice.
doing fabulous.
Tony, be nice. We're not going to invite you back otherwise. Anyway, let's say hello to our friend Jason Droege.
Exactly.
Jason?
Joining us virtually.
Guys,
So where are you right now, Jason? You're in your office in Santa Barbara, is that right?
I am in my office right now in
Right.
Carpinteria.
And Jason is the VP of Product at Taser International. And yes, that is, in fact, the Don't Tase Me Bro Taser.
Ooh.
So, and Jason's going to tell us a little bit about something Taser's been up to over the last, I guess, year and a half, something like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, about a year and a half.
Yeah, okay. So, but I want to go back to Tony real quickly.
Sure.
So Tony, why don't you tell us, Tony is the founder and used to be the CEO of RampRate. And how long, first of all, tell us about RampRate and how long have you been involved with RampRate?
I first have to say hi to Jason. How are you, sir?
Please.
Hey, long time no chat,
Been
Tony.
a long time. You look in pixels and bits.
I am. Do I look less
Very
green?
white teeth.
Last time I saw you, you said, "They're suing me for billions of dollars." What did I do?
Was that you that was suing me?
It was
I
a
thought
long
that was the
time ago,
entertainment
yeah.
industry.
Nice to see you. Okay. Yeah, Mark.
I didn't realize it was such a reunion.
Yeah.
It's going to be a more interesting show than I thought.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, tell us about RampRate. First of all, what does RampRate do?
RampRate is the business of helping companies manage procurement and IT services, everything from co-location to data centers to cloud computing to telecom, all sorts of infrastructure. We work with some of the world's largest companies, whether it's helping them build and procure the cloud, or we work on smaller transactions, sub-million, helping some of the startups that are tomorrow's rocket ships get on the map. We focus for 7 years on understanding the key disciplines and drivers of different deals from SLAs, business terms, and prices. And we look at the difference between internal use of infrastructure and outsourcing and CDNs and managed services and cloud.
So basically, you guys have studied the entire landscape of services that people can provide. You've made yourselves experts at everything from managed hosting to full cloud to private cloud to all the different options that are out there.
Yeah.
And so when largely large enterprises, I believe at this point, come to you, is that correct or not?
Some of the small ones were small before, now they're large.
Okay, so people come to you and you get rid of all the confusion and all the sort of salesman stuff. Because I know when I go and buy stuff or when I bought stuff at the multiple companies I've done, it's confusing. I mean, it really is, and everyone's got their own little spin on it. And we're experts at applications when we make companies, right? We're not experts at managed hosting, so we have to decode it and think about it and talk to our friends and figure it out. And so what you've done is you basically will advise someone on that and guide them through that process. So
we wish we could advise, but it's actually our black box, which is called the Service Provider Intelligence Index.
Okay.
Back in the early days, I was on the start team of a place called Exodus. We were in the hosting business.
Now, how long ago was that, first of all?
Eons.
But we're talking like, okay, say
95, 96.
Okay. So 15, so you've been doing this for 15 years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I hate to say it too because I was around then.
Long story short, back then it was always a sales-driven model. How is enterprise going to adopt particular outsourcing, hosting, and co-location? Well, each wave, as they get into different layers of infrastructure, start to change. It's still a complex process. It still requires a lot of selling. So our concept at RampRate was to level the playing field, use a database-driven index. We call it the SPI, Service Provider Intelligence Index. And that sole strategic intent is to manage and figure out the trade-offs between SLAs, business terms, and prices on complex IT. How do you fill in and use the space that you currently own? How do you consolidate and get rid of what's unnecessary? How do you use multiple pricing models with each of the service providers, which will allow maximum ROI? And we generally, in most cases, do it absent of the sales crew.
That's good to know. Okay.
Interesting.
Now, you brought some slides, and some of these I actually think are fairly interesting, so I want to have you walk us through a little bit.
Perfect. I think you kind of said, you know, the top line of the slide is that there's nothing new about cloud. There's virtualization, there's cloud, there's parallel processing from back here when thou. When we look at a cloud deal, we translate it. Because again, a CIO comes to us and says, here's my buckets. Here's my spend, here's my colo, here's my data center, here's my telecom, here's my managed services, here's my outsourced applications, here's my cloud. What percentage goes in what bucket, and how do I manage it all in one space? So we're in essence a translation machine for what the ROI is on a deal and which segment is efficient for each of the vertical markets we work in. So we can walk through some of that.
So, all right, so next slide, or?
Yeah.
Fun.
Got it. A little fuzzy, but you know, it's about speed. We don't want to make a RampRate program out of it, but you really kind of look at market benchmarks and procurement services and lifecycle management and planning analysis so you can actually make a decision. When companies send out an RFP, in most cases, they're just telling the vendor what they don't know.
No, that's a very good point. So then the vendor, because it's all about the sales guys, isn't it? Even still, is that true?
You know, sales is a very honorable field.
I'm not
that
saying
anyone
it's
ever called
dishonorable,
me a
but
sales guy.
Sales guys are there to sell you things. That's just practical
They
reality.
enable people to make decisions. But the decisions that you should make are based on data for your enterprise and to keep flexible or agile or any of the other 15 adjectives that are driving the market. That's ultimately the key. What's the next?
Let's go here.
So the SPI Index manages billions of dollars of transactions over the last 8 years, and we can see trend analysis data across each of the silos of spend. We'll get off of that.
Hang on.
You guys bored yet? These are the types of clients, and every one of them has cloud initiatives, but they don't necessarily call them cloud. You know,
Interesting. What do they call them?
Well, they're managed
Well, some of these
services.
people have been with you guys for, you know, the last 5, 6 years.
Yeah.
So before cloud was the hip hop happening new thing.
Well, cloud is a name.
Yes,
I mean,
we know that. We've been
in the
over
beginning of
the
the time, there was virtual hosting, and then you also had something called CDNs, which was an outsource. Give the guy your files and they'll deliver it for you. So I don't see that as any different than a cloud either. So everyone is struggling to get rid of the purchase of CapEx or hardware, and in essence, that's pretty much buried in the cost. But if we think that the cloud is like living up there, it's still servers and bits and bytes and virtual software and monthly commitments. It's not like you're just going to go in and turn it on when you need it and turn it off when you need it, because anything that really has scale requires a monthly service and a yearly contract and things of that nature.
All right, let's go to this next slide, because you showed this to me before the show, and this is actually a great slide.
Great. I can hardly see it. Can everybody out there see
Hopefully
it?
we can clean that up. I mean, you can read it a little bit. So this monitor's not that great, so it actually will look better on the real monitor.
Okay, so let me just...
Can you see it on my screen? You can see it on my screen here if you want.
Can I see it on your screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got it. So the way we've laid this out, guys, is that each of the particular hosting silos, which is data center, colocation, managed hosting, virtual hosting, shared hosting, cloud compute, and PaaS and SaaS, all have different best practices and different capabilities. And as you look down the chart, all oh so pretty, you'll notice that cloud is really way up on the right. But for the people who don't need the things that cloud has, you can see where efficiencies lie. So this chart is not about who can or who can't do cloud. It's about who has scale and who has efficiency.
So cloud is one thing out of many.
And really it's an infinite supply. And it's a new product and it's a new marketing schema. But there's an infinite supply.
Wait, let's go back to it. There is not an infinite amount of cloud. Ultimately, there are machines somewhere, right? There's a finite number of machines somewhere defining the cloud. So I think what you're saying is that it's effectively infinite in terms
What
of
is
market.
it for the millions of people that stored their GeoCities page on GeoCities servers for 15 years? Was
yeah,
that
for
cloud?
them it's infinite. Yeah, absolutely. I would
Toasted.
argue. Well, to them it's cloud.
To them, it's cloud. So there's an infinite amount of suppliers that are vertically focused and doing a great job. I can't tell you there's millions of $1-million deals per year out there.
Right.
But things are starting to move.
Okay. Let me throw it now to Droege, because I'd like Droege to tell us a little bit about what he's doing at Taser and what Taser's been up to with the cloud. So Jason, why don't you just explain to us, first of all, what Taser's been up to and what you've been heading up as a project?
Yeah, sure. So when I joined Taser about 18 months ago, we were primarily a weapons company, a less lethal / non-lethal weapons company. And so it was kind of a...
Jason, can I stop you just real quickly? Emily, can we turn him up in here? We're having a very difficult time hearing him.
He's not that soft.
Sorry about that, folks. I'm sure you can hear him fine, but in the studio we're just having trouble, so apologies.
Okay. Yeah,
We got to start doing this like every show. Got to turn it up like right away. So.
Should I keep going? Or?
Yeah, much better. Go ahead. Keep
Right.
going. Keep going, Jason.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so when I joined the company about 18 months ago, I did so with the intention of kind of coming in and building a new suite of products to get Taser out of being a weapons-only company and more into a full-service technology solutions provider company. To do that, we built a number of products. One of them was evidence.com, which is going to be sort of most germane to this conversation. We built also a piece of desktop software called Evidence Sync, and we built a device called the Axon, which is a on-officer video capture system that feeds into evidence.com. So we kind of built all these clients that are proprietary for law enforcement, for governments, for medical industry, whoever wants to use them, to collect data from the field, from weapons, from video cameras, et cetera, and then store it in evidence.com, which is essentially our private cloud. The concept of cloud, I think, as Tony accurately states, has been around for a while. And it's really just a marketing name, much like SaaS or much like a lot of things are marketing names, right? Even Web 2.0 and whatever.
Right.
But we're essentially building our own private cloud. So we're not leveraging Amazon or anything Microsoft's doing or Google's doing. We built our own data center in Los Angeles, got all of our own storage. And the reason we did that was because the data that we're storing is so sensitive. It's evidence data.
It's evidence in murders and actual things like that, right?
Murders, shootings, people dying, drug deals, people getting tased, like all the stuff that doesn't make it to cops, that actually goes into court. We store, and we store it in high definition video format.
So the fact that we have Lauren Bacall here, the fact that we have something like this speaks volumes to people who are scared of security.
Yes.
Doesn't mean it's any more secure, but
Well,
the
I think
fact
people
that
are afraid of security on the public clouds.
Yeah.
So, which is right.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's.
I mean, you guys wouldn't have built this on Amazon, for example.
Right.
Well, actually, that's true. But you're not going to put evidence on Amazon. But there's a number of government agencies already putting public records on Amazon, for example, through other application providers. I think there's a few counties in New York State that are doing it. So people are starting to move there. I mean, ultimately, money rules the world, and if you can do something for less money and less hassle, despite what people might protest, about really anything, they'll move to the cheaper option, provided that it provides them with security, that it doesn't, have some other detriment in some other way.
Right.
And in addition, something like evidence.com is meant to not just store data. Storage is really sort of the generic commodity, but it's an application that runs on top of the data that makes the data more useful. Because if I can just kind of explain how data is stored and retrieved and managed in a police agency today, or at least a lot of them, a lot of data is still stored on DVDs in envelopes that go into people's desk drawers. So you have a video that was recorded a year and a half ago that might vindicate an officer, or someone being prosecuted, and they can't find the data. It takes like 8 months to find the data.
Right.
So when you store it in the cloud, you can also put the application on top of it and make it searchable, retrievable, easily accessible, shareable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So adds great efficiencies to some very efficient processes that currently exist.
So Jason, would it be fair to say you guys have essentially implemented your own private YouTube, but a lot more secure and a lot more high definition?
Well, it's YouTube and then it stores video. That's kind of where at least from my perspective, that's kind of where it ends.
Right.
And our model is actually quite a bit different than YouTube, right? YouTube, you have, some single digit percentage of videos uploaded for every, a video downloaded, right? You'll have 2 uploaded and 500 viewed. Our model is, officers will record traffic stops, like anything that could potentially be of interest, submit it into the system, and then maybe only retrieve, 3-4% of the data or 10% of the data, like ever in the data's lifetime. Right. So it's more of an archival service than it is, a YouTube live service where, there's more demand than there is supply, I guess, supply of videos rather.
Yeah, it makes sense. So basically 99% of it's never viewed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Okay, well, I want to stop everyone right there because I believe I'm hearing something in one of my ears. I'm pretty sure. Maybe not. Maybe. Nope. I guess maybe not.
Can I ask Jason a question?
But anyway, there we go. That's what I was looking for. Storm on demand. We're going to do Storm today. Now, I won't ask you to do it because I know your voice is really not up to the Storm on demand. You don't really have the Storm voice today. So
I'll do same.
We do have you have your Storm cup, though, and you have a little guy, so there we go. Storm on Demand at stormondemand.com. Storm on Demand is infrastructure as a service. It's a cloud computing platform that is powerful enough to replace dedicated servers. Storm on Demand is a proprietary cloud platform that was designed by Liquid Web, one of the largest web hosting providers with over 12 years of experience, almost as much experience as Tony Greenberg. Storm on Demand is easier to use and less expensive than Amazon EC2. Features include server setup in minutes, cool little guys, which Amanda is making go across here. Easy scaling, backup and restoration capabilities, pay-as-you-go utility-style billing. Options include cPanel, Fantastico, Little Muscle Guys, Ubuntu, Debian, CentOS, fully managed servers, private networking, and much, much more. Storm on Demand, or Storm on Demand at stormondemand.com. Thank you.
Forte.
All right,
Forte.
back to our regularly scheduled program. So, Jason, can you tell us anything about the characteristics of your private cloud in terms of how many machines? Is there anything you can talk about with respect to sort of give us an idea of the scope of this?
Sure. I mean, some of the data I can share, but only obviously what's been public. We don't want to share too much about the system because of what we're storing.
Yeah, Jason, we
yes.
can't see your entire computer screen there.
We can't. He's joking.
Oh, okay.
That's a joke. Sorry. I'll try to control him from now on. It's Tony, though. What can I do?
Our systems are the basis of the infrastructure is Cisco UCS. We're also using IBM for storage. We tried to go with only a few vendors for speed of implementation. It's a fairly complex system, and we had to build it quickly, so we had to make a lot of decisions, to get it done quickly. And having a few vendors is, one of the ways to do it. From a storage standpoint, right now we have the ability to store multi-petabytes. We planned that from day one. If you do the math, we plan on storing, potentially hundreds of petabytes over the next 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, video adds up really quickly, especially when you want to keep it in super high definition format. Not all of it's on disk. A lot of it's going to be on tape and other sort of cheaper media. And then, outside of that, there's not too much to say about the infrastructure. One thing that's kind of interesting is we built the Axon devices to plug into a proprietary dock, which kind of sits at the agencies. Yep. So, if you ever see it, it's, you unplug the head cam because the camera actually goes over the officer's ear. You pull it out, you plug it into something called the Evidence Transfer Manager, and then that itself has got a cache on it. Because there's just so much data and such limited bandwidth. So, one of the biggest challenges we had to solve was, you have this government infrastructure where you might only have a 10 or 20 megabit pipe out of an agency, but they want to upload, 400 gigabytes of data a day, and they want to and they want to continue to allow their officers or personnel to use the web and, not interrupt their daily lives. So, one of the things that we did is we put a cache actually inside the agency because, at 3 in the morning, you're not going to get as much bandwidth usage as at 3 in the afternoon. So we can do our uploads then versus, interrupting bandwidth, during the workday.
Right. Okay, so the officer, just to make sure we're all clear on this, so the officer basically wears a little headset, and the officer always has it on, basically, when they're on duty, or only when they stop their car or something like that, I would imagine, right?
No, they always have it on.
So it's always on. So it's recording all the time, and it's recording locally, and
well, actually, let me correct you on it's always on, but it's not always recording. It's always buffering, but the officer chooses when to actually record the video to the device. So it's not like a Big Brother kind of thing.
Yep.
They do it per incident.
Hang on a second. Equipment malfunction, Tony.
Sorry.
All right. So basically, then when they get, all right, so basically at some point an incident occurs, they go back to the police station, and then they take the headset off and they put it on a local unit where you have a lot of cache buffering there. So at that point the evidence moves. The evidence is in two places essentially at that point. The copies
right.
Until this gets wiped, obviously. And then it sits there. It either goes right away or it sits there for some period of time and then it's uploaded. So there is sort of a chain. I imagine there's some sort of chain of custody and all sorts of things to safeguards against losing the evidence at some point, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, we do all kinds of tracking to ensure that the video that was recorded by the officer that was then actually stored to the local Axon device then was then transferred to the ETM or directly to evidence.com. We do a lot of hash validation to make sure that the actual basically bits and bytes are intact and as they were when they were recorded, and that kind of goes to chain of custody or chain of evidence that you're referring to.
Jason, it's Lauren Bacall here. There's a question from the audience. They're asking, does Taser have a way to protect from officers tampering with a video?
Yeah, we do. Well, that's part of what the hash validation is. So a hash is essentially a unique identifier based on the size and characteristics of a piece of data. So if you are streaming a bit of video to storage, you can create a hash when that happens, and that hash basically becomes the unique identifier that says if this hash matches every single time it's copied from place to place, then the content is valid and it's as it was recorded. And in addition, there's physical characteristics to the device that prevent tampering. But usually, you have a situation where it's kind of the opposite. You have 99.99% officers out there that are, honest, trustworthy, wanting to do a good job, and it's only a few bad apples.
Yeah.
So, the real protection is from, criminals or people wanting to break in the system and destroy evidence that might be, incriminating to them. So, it's meant to be a useful device. I mean, the officer gets to choose when they turn on and off the device. So, it should be data that, has some level of integrity there. In addition to the fact that we have a privacy mode for the device. So let's say an officer, is using the restroom, for example, or having a personal conversation. They can put the device into privacy mode, and that prevents the buffer. And so, that's another feature of the device. So, from an integrity standpoint, I think the next logical question that will probably be asked is, well, will the officer turn on the device and turn off the device whenever it's convenient for them? And the answer is no. And we have the ability to actually pre-buffer the previous 30 seconds to 2 minutes of video that the officer might have seen, so that if an officer, if a car drives by, for example, and they go, oh, there goes the criminal, they hit the event button that starts the recording, then they can capture the license plate, in the pre-buffer of the video. So we're always buffering.
Okay. One last question, sort of off to the side a little bit, but I'm just curious. How do you guys sell this? You sell it to a department basis, or, if I'm watching this and I'm a police officer or I'm a police chief, and I want to get this from my department. How do I go about it?
You just contact Taser directly. We have relationships with most of the police agencies in the U.S. Something like 16,000. And so, we already know that market and sell into that market today. So if anybody's interested in getting it, they would just contact our sales team.
Okay, cool. I want to bring Tony in the conversation for a second. So You've been listening to this entire time. Could you have helped him with his cloud deployment? Is that something you could have helped him with, do you think, or not?
Well, there's a risk and a trade-off. There's when you're taking a look at making a decision whether to build or buy infrastructure,
Yep.
you have cost, you have scale, and you have risk. And in their circumstance, risk is going to be their highest caliber issue because you're dealing with a legal issue and a legal bond.
Right.
So in certain cases of that nature, you may just say an outsource will not happen. Now, it's funny because the banks are the first ones to outsource these days. But if Jason feels that there's going to be enough control by having it in his own hot little hands,
Yep.
it sometimes is predicated through a government agency to do things of that nature. In 99% of the cases, you can move the infrastructure elsewhere. What we have done for him wouldn't have been to say, hey, let me help you find a space to put this, but we would assess risk. We would look at the load on the organization. We would look at their commitment to resources, the quantity of headcount they would have to manage that on a 24/7 basis. And then we would say, this is what it would cost you to do elsewhere and redundant, and this is what it looks like 1, 2, 3, and 5 years from now. So when a large company comes to us and says, I've got 35 data centers, can I do it out of 12, and which one's virtualized, and how can I off this, shut down these AS400s and put it in the cloud, it's always the same. What is the risk? How much does it cost to migrate? What is my upside, downside CapEx? How can I grow over the next 3 to 5 years? I'm wondering to Jason, is if those particular calculations took place, were these cost is now object and you just did not want to trust an outsourcer? Or what drove you to the decision of what I would expect a 7-figure investment in data center operations?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of it was driven by the kind of data that we're storing, to be honest. You're asking the agency to give you some valuable data and trust their most integral processes to you. And so we become the outsource provider to them, and then re-outsourcing beyond that, just it increases the difficulty of the sales pitch.
Yeah. So unthinkable to you, basically.
So I may argue that what you built really isn't a cloud.
Well, we put a little picture on it that looks like a cloud.
That seems to be about all you need, based on what we've been able to
my
see
point is
around
well
the shows.
taken. And I guess for the audience's sake,
What would you call it? Would you call it, you just basically call it data center?
private network
Okay, so private network.
Private network.
In a data center.
in a data center. That's fine. I'm down with the cloud. We got it. My question to you is, what are the types of things that aren't going to be cloud? And won't you take your redundant, create a redundant database elsewhere for security standpoint? What are you going to outsource, and where are you going to use a true utility type service that you can foresee over the next couple of years, Mr. Web 2.0?
Yeah, I mean, right now our plan is to keep our own, mini cloud, private network, whatever you want to call it, pretty much, hosted, managed internally. It's really a business driver, right? I mean, from a cost standpoint, there's probably some efficiencies that could be gotten there, but those efficiencies are outweighed by the nervousness of the customer base. So it's sort of a if they're willing to accept some changes that would save us money without affecting our revenue, then that might be something we do. But I don't think there's any real decisions on that yet, because we're doing something that no one's ever done. And to be quite frank, people are just getting used to storing their data with SaaS companies or SaaS companies or whatever. And we just said, okay, we're going to take the most sensitive data on Earth and store it in our service.
Yeah.
So if this proves to work, I think we'll clear the way for a lot of other people and answer a lot
It
of
is
other...
It is a pretty strong move, and to be honest with you, I'm really glad to have. We've not yet had someone who's been who's implemented a service in the cloud or whatever you want to call it, but nonetheless, it's been mostly providers and people like that. So this is the first time we really had a big, large scale end customer that's actually doing something. So
the decisions that are made. I mean, you take a look. Let's go 5 years ago when every CFO and CIO had a gun to his head and they said, outsource, outsource. And the whole idea, excuse me for anybody offshore, it doesn't say it doesn't work and it doesn't say it does. My point is, there was a perception.
Offshoring of hosting?
Offshoring of hosting, offshoring of anything.
There was a lot of offshoring of...
Outsourcing of network services.
Yes.
The waves we've seen over the last 12 years about feeling comfortable. Like when we first did Exodus and we were moving servers elsewhere, people go, how can you put your servers over there?
Right.
But the gun to the head, when you read, his name Vivek, government, new government CIO, we're moving to the cloud. I'm going, what cloud? Your infrastructure is bigger than any cloud. So it's a great coined word, but my question is, where is the ROI? And there are pieces. It is not about are we moving to the cloud. It's like what pieces are safe,
Right.
for how long, at what price, and when it scales. When do we bring it back in, or put it in larger infrastructure?
Well, the stuff I've been reading has been saying that a lot of people have been hybridizing. So we've had a couple news stories on past shows about people who are saying, all right, the stuff that really freaks me out, I'm just going to keep it on my own stuff. But 50%, 60% of what I'm doing, I don't really care. So if that's up in the cloud, then and that saves me money, then great.
When you take a look at the constraints, variety of customers, say we had one large mobile customer globally, their role was to try to...
That's your microphone.
Less. Better to be seen and not heard. Or what we looked at was, what's the possibility of cloud? Well,
Right.
Cloud, you think, oh, great, problem solved, we'll put it in the cloud. Oh, outsource, we'll put it in the cloud. But the question is, what if the database interaction has to be 3 milliseconds to complete a good quality service transaction for the customer?
Oh, that's okay. This is an important point. You actually made this before the show also, and I thought this was a very interesting point. So
the point is, you got databases,
Yep.
you got UIs on the web, you've got phones, you have transaction speeds, and you have customer service. And you always have to look at customer service and the quantity of time it takes to execute a transaction successfully before the client leads. Now, when you take a look at e-commerce,
Yep.
how fast does it have to pull that information to complete the e-commerce transaction before you have an abandoned cart?
Right.
How fast before somebody decides they don't want to buy a ringtone anymore?
Yeah.
So you've got 3 to 8, maybe 10 millisecond round-trip transaction time between databases and storage that will facilitate a proper transaction. Unless cloud's got 50 pops or 100 pops, or...
So you're saying that's not possible in the cloud, or at least you don't know what you're buying necessarily.
Mission-critical transactions currently aren't living in the cloud. If you want to buy a widget
Because
on
you
iTunes,
can't guarantee that
have a nice
transaction
day.
speed? Is that why?
Can't
That's
guarantee
what
the
you mean?
transaction speed. The service provider, at the end of the day, you have to look at not just the price, it's the service levels. And the boilerplate service agreements that you have in every contract just say, I don't care what I do, it's not my fault.
Yeah.
But when you customize them and you're talking mission critical and you're losing millions and you're dealing with studios and post-production and e-commerce and financial services where when something is late, it costs millions.
Right.
When an ad doesn't deliver on time and money is lost, that's when RampRate or other companies in the source and advisor space step in and create a proper debit and credits menu around the service levels to create the guardrails that the service provider will be successful.
Okay.
And then you got to monitor.
But yeah, I mean, Tony, even with SaaS though, there's enough. I mean, for the mission critical stuff, for the more complex applications, I mean, there's a lot of IT products that plug into, infrastructure as a service or platform as a service or those types of things. So even in those environments, it seems to me that, RampRate would have, services that would be pretty valuable to people.
Are you pitching me?
No, I'm just.
No, but I'm going to pitch both of you right now. I'm going to have to interrupt you real quick.
I've agreed with you in almost 10 years, Tony. So
It's been a long time, baby.
All right. Separate yourselves.
All the love.
All right. So hold the love for a moment. I got to talk about Verticore. So first of all, I want to thank Verticore, our new thisweekend.com. Remember I said a couple weeks ago that we're going to have something new coming up? Verticore's hosting it. Well, this is it. Thisweekend.com is graciously hosted by Verticore. Is your cloud hosting provider letting you down? Well, take a look at managed private cloud solutions from Verticore. More secure, more reliable, more redundant than Rackspace or Amazon. Actually, let me get their website up here. Just occurred to me I didn't put it up there. There we go. Yeah. Completely avoid the cost and hassle of buying and maintain IT equipment and software. A managed private cloud solution can easily replace your current IT infrastructure and eliminate IT pains. Deliver 100% uptime to end users. Configure and deploy computing resources in just minutes. With Verticore, your private cloud is hosted on the most advanced and secure data center on the planet, using only the best-in-class hardware and software, and giving you access to virtually unlimited bandwidth. Verticore's team of experts monitor and maintain your private cloud 24/7/365, freeing your internal staff to concentrate on supporting only your applications and projects that can help grow your company. Verticore at verticore.com. Thank you. Okay, I think it may be time to play our little game that we play every week here called the Mark Laughlin Group. So we can fire that up.
From Santa Monica, Mark Laughlin
Group, the American original.
Issue number 1 from Werner Vogel's blog, who's the CTO of Amazon.com, on December 13th. It's a little old, but still in there. Today, we launched a new option for acquiring Amazon EC2 compute resources called Spot Instances. And basically what this means is, I'm not going to do the voice because it's just hurting me to do it just watching you. It's like I look at your throat and I feel the tickle. So
I can probably do it better than you today.
probably can actually. I can give rest of it to you. So anyway, so basically Amazon launched this Spot Instances, and what it means is that it basically goes to auction. So the computing resources that are normally sold for a fixed cost in the EC2 cloud are now available. Basically, when the resources free up and Amazon doesn't really care as much, they will charge a lower price. And so it basically goes to people bid on it in an auction kind of scenario. Almost like AdWords, sort of what it felt like to me when I was reading it. So, so the question is, what does this mean? Is this a significant step forward for cloud pricing? Is there a market demand for this? Will this push more adoption? Tony?
Spot markets for a dog? I think spot markets are only really made for...
Oh, is your microphone off? I think your microphone's off. I asked you, Tony, where is your microphone, first of all? That's the first thing. We got to clip it. We're going to have to paste that thing on you.
Sorry, I've got restless leg syndrome.
All right, thanks. So just watch the wire down there so we don't lose it again.
You can't have spot markets for things that have infinite supply. Pricing will fluctuate, is in the marketing materials, is marketing speak, and as far as I'm concerned, total hogwash. Maybe academics will use this type of service. They're saying that studios will. Been working in studios for 12 years. I'm sure they'll find someone to use it, but spot markets, to me, are not real advantageous. You're dealing with Amazon, which is an oversubscription model. Their job is to subscribe as much capacity in their area as possible. So if they give somebody a new marketing twist, a new marketing vein, more power to you. I think it's fantastic marketing. I'd buy it myself.
Okay, so to summarize your argument, this is stupid because it's an infinite commodity, and therefore there's no point in having a market with an auction place.
Unless it's December 24th and you're buying your last-minute Christmas gifts. Yeah. Then Amazon's going to be a little bit stretched.
All right.
So spot markets, I think, great if you plan them, but they're not going to be used for anything substantial.
Okay. Mr. Droege, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you've kind of got Amazon that, in some ways is their own market. So, if you could get processing power for a process that you don't have priority for, then why not use it and save some money?
Okay.
I'm not sure.
It is for incidental tasks.
Yeah, I mean, Amazon is the most widely known cloud computing service. There's probably 1,000 other people that do things that are similar, but to be honest with you, I don't know of anyone who has nearly the brand recognition that they do. So as a result, they have all the people going there, offering basically a captive audience, something for cheaper. Seems like it could work.
Yeah, but you don't seem excited.
No, it's just another way to, as Tony said, it's just another way to monetize, down cycles for their system. So, sometimes you sell things it's a concert ticket model. Like when you have lots of concert tickets, they're cheap. When you have no concert tickets, they're expensive.
Right. Okay. All right.
By the way, I'm going to disagree with you on something, whether you like it or not.
It wouldn't be a show unless you did.
Yeah.
Please.
I'm just artificially agreeing with you.
Okay.
Tony?
Yes.
What do you disagree with them on?
I have no idea.
All right.
I don't like your hat.
Wow. Okay. Issue number 2.
Yeah.
All right. Apastry publicly announced at the Cloud Connect conference in Santa Clara. By the way, we haven't talked about that yet.
Right.
Big Cloud Connect conference up in Santa Clara last week or actually a little bit into this week as well, I think. But basically, they announced a new product called Cloud IQ Storage, which sounds a lot like a lot of other products in my ears when I read it. But one thing caught my eye. They basically are offering plug-and-play compatibility with the Hadoop distributed file system, part of the popular Apache Hadoop open source framework. So the thing that caught my eye about that is, for those of you who don't know what Hadoop is, it's an open source implementation of Google's Bigtable technology. Bigtable is, instead of using a database, they use a big honking table that spreads across hundreds of thousands of commodity servers. assumes failure. It's very, very fast for reads. It's very, very sophisticated, and but they won't give it to the world, and so the world said, "Oh, let's make our own based on what we know about Google's and open source it." Hence Hadoop. So, so the question is, and I know you guys probably may or may not know a lot about this, or a little about this, or may not know a lot about this yet. But my question is, things like Hadoop and Cassandra, which is essentially Facebook's implementation of the same thing, or Tokyo Cabinet, another popular implementation. My question is, will we start seeing cloud offerings like this one from Apastry include Hadoop and Cassandra and Tokyo Cabinet? Have you been hearing about anything like this in your world, Tony?
I can make a few comments. The stranglehold on cloud is not capacity, which I continue to say has infinite supply. It's about I/O and IOPS. So the ability to move the data in and out of the cloud is really ultimately what is going to give it its scale. So if you say that Hadoop is similar, let's just say it's the opposite infrastructure of what the Googles did back in the time, and this company Inktomi came out. They had a search engine called Hotbot, and it was twice as fast as anybody else.
Right.
It laid flat from an architecture and involved the delivery from a database or a storage unit much faster. So I think it's an I/O restriction as opposed to a capacity, and I hope that they deploy it across all and create a more competitive
That's interesting.
market.
One of the news stories I didn't read last week, we just ran out of time, but which came up, was that Cisco announced a new router. I think it was a router or hub or something like that. But basically it was a piece of infrastructure that was specifically geared for the cloud. Now, I don't know whether they just put a cloud paint job on it, they cloud washed it, and really it's just another router, or whether they actually, had some design in mind that was cloud specific. But their point was exactly what Tony just said, was that I/O is the limiting factor on adoption of the cloud, which also gets back to your other point that transactions in the database, from to and from the database within your application within the cloud is also a limit. Well, it's ultimately the same thing when you get right down to it.
Now, I must say before I turn over to the guy who really knows tech, that Apastry's done a heck of a job focused on the enterprise. Enterprise cloud isn't there yet.
Yeah.
And Apastry has really made some great moves. There's other companies such as Joyent that have come into the space and starting to deliver some enterprise applications. A couple buddies are working over there. All in all, there's probably 100 cloud providers. There's about 12 that are maintaining a bucket of about 90% of the business. The more vertically focused each of them become, the more the arm will match the leg, will match the heart, will match the body. And this is sort of this venture-funded appendages
Interesting operation-based metaphor.
And as they start to come together and consolidate, there's going to be some real opportunities and a selling cycle that will reduce the cost.
Right.
And again, down to zero. And eventually, the major companies will deliver. And you'll be able to deliver media on Google or Microsoft or maybe a variety of other applications or infrastructures that are acquired. And we'll continue to move on to the next better, cheaper thing.
Mr. Droege, what do you think about all this?
Yeah, I hate to generally agree with Tony, but it's true. It's I/O that brings down, that ultimately ends up being your limiter, right? Processing speed and RAM and all these other things can be purchased in, pretty wide supply. I'm not familiar with Apastry or
Hadoop.
Some of those other things, but
yeah.
Well, I know Hadoop. We were considering using Hadoop here, but one thing that we found was that Hadoop is so. You need to have a lot of data, a lot of requests, a lot of scale to even leverage Hadoop.
Yes.
We had some consultants come in here from a company that helped us on some of our search problems, and we're like, okay, should we use Hadoop? It seems like overkill, and their answer was, when you have millions and millions and millions of users, yeah, you might consider Hadoop, but at least for our application, it kind of comes down to I/O, and it really comes down to efficient application writing, to be honest, because you end up with a lot of I/O issues and other scale issues as a result of poorly constructed databases and poorly written code. At least in my experience, more often than you do as a result of not parallel processing your transactions.
Are you basically saying that if you're having trouble with AdWords, you should write a new ad and not blame Google?
Having trouble with AdWords.
Yeah, I'm not sure I get that one either. But
I'm going to say I'm not saying that since I don't quite
It's a
understand.
metaphor. It's a metaphor.
very good, Mr. Droege. Thank you. All right, let's go to issue number 3. All right, so McAfee is targeting SAS providers with a new program, and basically they call it the McAfee Cloud Secure Program. It's a series of audits and processes and controls which you can buy from them to basically say that your cloud is secure. When you pass, you receive a McAfee Secure stamp of approval, right?
This is reminiscent of last week.
It is. It is. So so last week we talked about the Open Secure Cloud
Security
Alliance. Cloud
Alliance.
Security Alliance. Thank you. Which is an open standards body, essentially creating standards to do the same thing, but not really sort of putting a little stamp on you, saying the good housekeeping stamp of approval. Not yet. They're talking about doing that, but not there yet. McAfee is actually commercializing it. I'm sure they charge money for this, but if you pass it, then you get the certification. So question. Is this stamp of approval something more fit for a standards body like the Cloud Alliance, or is it more fit for a private entity like McAfee? Let's go to Droege this time. What do you think about that, Jason?
I think standards bodies are incredibly slow and inefficient in general. So I'm going to say that whether or not it's better suited for a standards body or not, it's probably going to be more reputable and marketed through someone like McAfee, right? Because part of these good housekeeping type stamps is about the brand that's behind it. VeriSign should just sell its logo so you can put it on its site rather than even offering a service behind it, because half of it's the brand. Seriously, you can do all these. Most companies do a lot of the proper secure things, and then you go to VeriSign, and then they validate that you did it, and they charge you an absolute ton of money to just say, oh yeah, they did it right. Thank you for $10,000 a year, our logo licensing.
So you actually think McAfee, even though they charge you through the nose, is the right answer? Private industry is the right answer anyway.
I'm not sure it's the right answer, but I think that it probably will end up being the answer. And look at a service like ours, right? We want as many logos that people trust on our site as possible that say, hey, all these brands that you all recognize that have to do with security, yeah, they've all looked at our stuff, so we're going to be more secure than the next guy. And we're doing above and beyond what we need to, or what a lot of these guys will even validate that we've done. But these things are about brand recognition as much as they are about actual process, protocol, and security.
Okay. Mr. Greenberg, what's your thoughts on the matter?
Oh, I see. Well, I would say traditionally security has been measured by ISO certification at the private hosting level.
Yep.
And moving that to a private org is quite a change. And if you look at the back of the internet times, you take a look at when there was private peering and we're making decisions, how bits could move this way or that way. When we talked to security and we were moving from Ethernet to fast Ethernet and fast Ethernet to gig, and then gig to 10 gig.
Right.
The security guys, they can't barely see anything in 10 gigs as the data streams are moving through. If they're setting up a private network to monitor and manage this thing, more power to them. But I want to see the guts behind it. I'm not willing to go with Jason and say that just because they got ISO certification and they have a great brand that they're going to offer good service. What I can say is if we take a hard look around and we truly have a monitoring service against each of these, and we take responsibility, much like an ISP took responsibility for spam,
Yeah.
or porn, or any of the other horrible things that exist out there on the internet. To me, it's about who's going to underwrite that transmission, to what level, how safe is that, and if you're going to underwrite it, what are the consequences? So a stamp means nothing until it can truly show what the outcomes would be in case of breach.
So standards body or commercial entity?
Standards body is a start, and commercial entities should handle the service. It should be under very, very strict reporting architectures from that standards body.
So hybrid?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Did I disagree?
I'd say you half disagreed.
Great.
All right.
Not just a hat.
Issue number 4. Does size matter? During World War II, U.S. intelligence basically estimated that Germany was producing 14,000 Panther tanks a month. Don't worry, this is going back to the cloud, I promise. But mathematicians were pretty skeptical of this, and they looked at the evidence of the tanks that were destroyed, and they basically came to the conclusion that they were making 256 a month, which is quite different from what the intelligence estimate was. The actual number, after the war was over, they went and actually looked at the records on the German side, they found the actual number was 255 a month. So the mathematicians were correct. Now, how did they do this? How did they basically outwit the intelligence folks? The reason they basically did it by looking at the serial numbers on the tanks, and looked at the statistical analysis of the random chance of if we got this serial number and that serial number, they were able to put together a model which told them much more accurately how many tanks per month they were actually producing. Now, how does this relate to the cloud? I'm glad you asked that question. So Amazon won't tell you how many machines it has in its elastic compute cloud grid. Neither will Rackspace, neither will any of these guys. But there are actually IDs associated with each one of these servers. And so using the same methodology, and I won't go into all of I looked at some of the math and some of the things behind it. It's pretty sound. They basically came to the conclusion, a guy named, actually I should give credit where credit's due, the gentleman who figured this out, Guy Rosen of jackofallclouds.com, applied this same methodology. He concluded that Amazon maintains about 83,000 servers. GoGrid maintains 181 servers, and Rackspace maintains only 488. So, question,
wow.
Yes.
Amazon.
So, question, are these numbers accurate? Do you believe this? I ask you, Tony.
Am I going to have to get out of my chair? They're ridiculous.
So you think these are completely
Show
off
me your
base.
methodology. I understand what capacities are. Tell me what's available.
Well, so what do you think the real
rent.
numbers are? How far off do you think they are?
Honestly, I actually know better, so I'm going to have to say no comment.
Got it. Okay.
But also in the world of virtual servers and virtualized environments, it's less relevant how many servers or server scores. It's kind of like counting the number of downloads at real networks.
Like counting hits.
Yeah.
Back in the day instead of page views.
Ultimately, I understand how you do the reverse methodology around trying to find those numbers, but
Yeah.
to what end? Are you looking for the infinite capacity? Are you looking for if they're ripping you off, or if they? What do you think they're looking for, Jason?
I think they're looking. I think they're looking for who's the most reputable, scalable partner to go with, right? If you're talking about storing your data or applications in one place versus another, the guy with 83,000 servers sure sounds better than the guy that has 100.
It's not. The guy with more vertical focus and more expertise in a particular market space at a certain dollar volume. It's just like any solutions provider. When Gartner Group came out with their Magic Quadrant, God love you, Gideon Gartner and all the people there.
Sure.
Really what it was all about is IBM or AT&T or EDS was a great vendor. When RampRate came along, sorry for the plug, it said, what vendor is good, at what price, for how long, in what location, under what SLAs. And so it's all about custom weighting. And so don't ever take an SLA for granted. Don't ever say just because Amazon's bigger, they're better, because they're not. There's true vendor fit, and there's true vendor repel.
Do you guys look at some of the smaller vendors as well?
We have made our living for years finding amazing small vendors that have been vertically focused, that support and have transparent pricing models that allow flexibility to happen. The evolution of CDNs, where we involved from all the small ones to all the big ones, and the small ones became the big ones, is a good example of the marketplace. Don't ever think that a small vendor is bad, because you can be a big fish to them. We're in a world right now where it's pretty fail-safe. We're not going to go down that often. Amazon's had a few problems, but that's in just certain server cores. Staying up, data centers are pretty close to telco grade, unless you got some really screwed up stuff. So let's focus on how they respond when 1,000 customers go down. When you ask your cloud computing provider, what is your redundancy? Do not show me your cloud. Show me a physical piece of your facility. I want to know on the webcam, I want to know this one is physically here, this one's physically there.
Yeah,
I
last show we talked about seeing into the metal.
I want to know what routes of power come into the building. What is your backup on your database? What's your round trip transit time between that and your disaster recovery facility? And I don't want to hear about it in the deck. I want to see it. That's when you're talking redundancy. That's when you're talking enterprise. And that's when the price changes and is worth it.
Got it. Jason, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think the question was why would they do it, and I think that the answer I still think that the answer is one of marketing. Secondarily, if you have 100 servers, and part of going with someone like Amazon or some of these other providers. Granted, there are vertical niches that certain people cater to, but the fact that Amazon has so much infrastructure. I think most people are going to feel comfortable that their data is, safer there. Whether or not that's true, I mean, we all know if you, geographically disperse two locations in, non-earthquake, blah 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 environments, that the chances of losing data are super small. But part of what Amazon offers is also a CDN, right? So if you're delivering content and you have 83,000 servers around the world, you're going to deliver content globally better than someone who has 100.
Oh, Jason. Let's go back to how many servers does the majority of the bits that come off of Akamai or Limelight? How many pops? They got thousands of pops. What percentage of the bits come off of 10 or 20?
What percent? I don't know what the statistics are. All I know is that the round trip time from here to Sri Lanka is a lot longer than from here to San Diego.
All right, Let me interrupt you guys because I have to listen for something which sounds kind of stormy. Get out your guys, get out your cups. It's that time once again, kids. That's right. Storm on demand. All right, including Tony. Tony's even helping out. The Storm on demand. Yeah, no, you can't pour it on the guy. We don't do that.
Can I have acid rain on your...
Storm on demand. Storm on demand is an infrastructure as a service. The cloud computing platform that is powerful enough to replace dedicated servers. Storm on demand is a proprietary cloud platform that was designed by Liquid Web, one of the largest web hosting providers with over 12 years of experience. Storm on Demand is easier to use and less expensive than Amazon EC2. Storm on Demand features include server setup in minutes, easy scaling, backup and restoration capabilities, and pay-as-you-go utility-style billing. Storm on Demand options include cPanel, Fantastico, Ubuntu, Debian, CentOS, fully managed servers, private networking, and much, much more. Storm on Demand is found at stormondemand.com. Yeah, I like playing Ride of the Valkyries. Scares the hell out of the other cloud companies. I don't know, it's my apocalypse now. It's best I can do. Anyway, thank you. I'll play every Thursday and Wednesday. Anyway. All right, so let's do the news. We've got a little time left.
I thought just on the back...
All right, let's go to the news. So first item, IBM is gunning for Amazon. So it was announced this week that the IBM Cloud is extending its cloud infrastructure and it's offering with commercial and enterprise-grade test and development services. So there's a lot of things in this press release, blah, blah, blah. So they're basically going after Amazon's gig. Mm-hmm. The thing that was interesting was PayPal is joining IBM as a partner to offer services to enterprise clients. And they're making a big deal out of this. So the question is if PayPal is integrated into IBM's cloud, so all the transaction services, obviously, that PayPal provides, and it's very seamless and very easy to build into your network, does this give them an advantage over Amazon? Does this hurt Amazon, especially if Amazon does not have a likewise similar agreement? I ask you, Tony.
I would say the integration with PayPal is not critical in the U.S., but will help them abroad. Everyone has a credit card in the U.S. PayPal is thought of as expensive and convenient. Mm-hmm. Also has one of the highest, visceral hyperbole, one of the highest fraud rates. Maybe I'm just saying that because I've been frauded by it 3 times.
You have. I forgot about it. I remember this.
But also, they're one of the most phished sites, PHISH. So I would say that PayPal's a phenomenal service. They've been wrought with fraud. I would say IBM working with them, it will not change the game in the U.S., but abroad it will be very helpful, especially where debit cards are more common and prepaid cards are more common than actually credit cards where you can authenticate, verify in the U.S.
Okay.
And I think IBM will bring an enterprise sensibility to the cloud and 35 sales reps with every sales call.
All right. Mr. Droege, your thoughts on the matter?
So sorry, the question was IBM is integrating PayPal as a payment solution into their cloud offering. Did I understand that?
Yeah. So basically, Amazon is looking at Amazon and EC2 and saying, "Geez, we wish we had that. How can we go and club them over the head with what they have plus some competitive advantage?" And they basically rolled it out this week and said, it's integration with PayPal. That's our big competitive advantage.
Yeah,
Is it or isn't it?
I would highly. I mean, is it exclusive? I'm sorry, I don't know the headline, because if it's not exclusive, then it's big.
I believe it is. I don't know that for sure, but I believe it is based on what I'm seeing here.
All right. I mean, maybe some incremental competitive advantage. I mean, I'm not sure.
Let's say it is. If it is exclusive, what do you think?
You know,
No.
it's a differentiator, but not substantial, because you know, if I run a site off of Amazon, can I just go to PayPal and integrate PayPal myself, which is PayPal's made pretty easy. So what's the real savings of effort and work?
I'm more curious about. I didn't really actually realize people do press releases anymore.
Oh, sure, all the time. You didn't know that?
IBM does.
It's an amazing thing. I know. It's an amazing world we live in, Tony. So, all right. So nobody's excited about that. Once we'll move on to the next story.
You can already do it, so big deal. It's like we have an exclusive deal with Google. You get search with your cloud computing.
We're a Microsoft partner.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. All right. So also last week at the conference, Dan Elron, Accenture managing partner for technology strategy, says, thanks to cloud computing, information now flows over national borders with an ease that alarms some governments. We've talked about this in past shows. He goes on to say, it's typical in the U.S. for companies to sell a set of new technology products and move on before the government, either here or abroad, takes much interest. The cloud is much different, warned Elron. He regards cloud computing, the current state of cloud computing, as a supranational phase of the expansion of the Internet. And he made his remarks before about 300 attendees at the Santa Clara Convention Center at the Cloud Conference last week. Governments in Europe and other parts of the world are concerned that cloud computing is a U.S.-based development, and it may compel them to adopt online practices they did not anticipate or originate. Governments are worried about vendor lock-in, the security of their data, and the privacy of their citizens, said Elron. Question, are we in a supranational phase? Essentially, what he's asking is, does the cloud threaten borders of countries? Tony. Not you, Droege. Not you, Droege. You'll get your chance.
European concerns. I don't really have any idea what they mean. Lock-in is just as big a problem for buyers as it is for governments.
Yep.
You know, if can I just go 90 degrees to the left?
Please.
Great. You know, Chanel prices their perfumes and they pay enormous sums of money to different web companies to, break apart and have different prices in Asia than they have in the United States. It doesn't work. Number two, the flow of data, the borders have always been open for the last 10 years. There's no way to discern what's going on. So I have no idea what he's talking about.
Okay, so I think what's different is this. So in the past, right, in the data center days when you were at Exodus, et cetera, Exodus had data centers in the United States, probably just downtown in LA, right, or up north, right? Places that
when we said we had 35, we had at least 16.
Okay, but you knew where they were.
We had them all
right?
over the world. Yeah.
Okay. So, but I think what's different. But if I became an Exodus customer, I would go in your data center, at the LA facility, for example, right?
Yeah.
If I was an LA-based company, probably. So I want to go and touch. I want to be able to see my machines. So I'd go, and so it's not like in my installation, I would know where it was. So therefore, I could obey United States law, and I would not be, violating it. Right. So let me just finish the point. So if I now buy the same service as a cloud service from Amazon or whomever, I don't know where their servers are. Their cloud, everything's virtualized. They have servers all over the world. So, it could at some point be in India or England or Spain. Who knows?
So that's a good thing. First off, the common practice, we're going to call it load balancing taxes, load balancing power, load balancing grandfather clauses across different data center regulations. There's the trade-offs, say when RampRate's working with a client, whether we were helping develop a strategy for a 1 million square foot facility in Iceland.
Right.
And we had to do all sorts of stuff up there. The trade-offs are huge. For 8 years now, companies like Oracle and Microsoft and McAfee and dozens of others have gone into tax-free zones and built data centers in Ireland. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Green.
Exactly. Bring it on, Laura.
But no voice.
Yeah.
No.
So load balancing data centers, the first decision these days for any large users is about power. And so we talk about the megawatts usage, and that's the main variable. Then it's about the millisecond transaction time to the databases and the storage. So the cloud in a less sensitive, non-enterprise environment, it doesn't really matter where it lives. And maybe in the beginning of time at Exodus, everybody wanted to fondle their servers. But eventually, space became sparse, and like any neighborhood, you didn't have blocks that were big enough or grow or contiguous enough. And so the decisions are never, I got to be here,
Right.
or I got to be there. You know, a large media company had 35 people that were working in an LA data center we were working on. And, you know, we had a 500-mile radius under which to send them. Because at this point in time, most of it is remote admin management.
Right.
So, immaterial.
Okay. Jason, what do you think?
I think it depends on it. The reason I stuck my finger up was just because I think it depends on the kind of data that you're storing. And I think supranational, basically what he means is, let's say, for example, we wanted to sell to Brazil or somebody like that, right? So they're storing super sensitive data with us, and they've got all sorts of national security policies and data, management protocols they have to, they have to follow. So when you start talking about using cloud services for more sensitive data, like evidence, for example, I think you start bumping into those issues a bit more. For a general business, if you're based in France and your content is replicated on 5, servers worldwide, and you sell, flowers on the internet, who cares? But I think the supranational is more. Let's say you're in the United States and you store, what government documents. You specialize in storing that. Well, if I'm the country of Brazil or China, especially China, right? Yeah. Or any country, I don't want that actual data to be in the West, because they can cut the Ethernet cord and bam, they got my data if a war starts.
Three things. The internet was invented in Europe. Linux was not invented by American. Shared hosting was all the rage before we decided to do this thing called colocation. By the way, that's C-O-L-O, not C-O-L-L. And so there's been shared hosting for decades across every infrastructure. I don't know what they're talking about.
Well, they're talking about the boundaries of the countries.
Can't we all just be one big happy world?
Pangea.
You would hope so.
One would hope so.
But if you're a government, you have to think the worst case scenario, right? You're not just thinking about, how to most efficiently run my economy. You have to think about, okay, well, what if a war breaks out between this country and that country? Is there any data that's in that country that could potentially compromise my war effort, for example?
Right. That's a good point, actually. We'll talk about that one.
Let's talk about peer-to-peer networks for a minute. It's a joke.
Yeah, let's not. Well, with that, I think we're out of time.
I still have that lawsuit on my wall.
Come on, Jason, bring it on.
I think we're going to leave that one on the table. All right, let's close the show out.
Well, this is the only time you will not hear much out of me. I will be back in full force next week. Everyone, make sure you give a warm round of applause virtually to our guest, Tony Greenberg, founder of RampRate, and of course, Jason Droege, VP of Product at Taser International, and of course, our sponsors, Verticore and Storm on Demand.
Yes, and NetDNA.
And
actually,
NetDNA.
if you could tweet out, thank you to Verticore,
Yes.
Storm on Demand, and NetDNA, all at the respective name of their company.com, as how you find them.
Absolutely.
And then, Tony, how do we find your company? RampRate.com?
RampRate.com, RampRate.com.
You are, what's your
Tony
Twitter?
at RampRate.com, and I'll.
What's your Twitter?
Huh?
What's your Twitter?
My Twitter.
Yeah.
Think Tony or RampRate Tony.
RampRate. Okay, very good. And Jason, what about yourself? Where do we find you online? What's your URLs?
I'm on Facebook/JDroege. I'm not a big Twitter guy.
No. What about I was actually thinking more about Taser.
Oh,
is it evidence.com or
Taser.com and evidence and evidence.com.
Okay, also can I have a free Taser?
Everybody asks
Do
that.
not give him that. He will bring
one
it
for the
into
show.
the
I'll
office.
give you a free data center.
It'd be great for Storm on Demand.
He wants to taser me,
solid.
Jason. No.
I'll give you a free
I'll
database
use it on
instance.
him if you give it to me. I promise.
That's
Next time
it.
he comes on.
I'm out of here.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Catch us next week. This has been This Week in Cloud Computing, Episode 5, and we'll see you soon.
Mark and Amanda.